what I found is that the way I was managing the back office was the exact same way I saw my dad do it when I worked for him, which is the exact same way I saw my grandfather do it when I would go into his office when I
Right.
was a little boy, which was there were filing cabinets. Nothing was ever filed appropriately. He was walking around the office trying to ask people whether we should pay the bill or not, or why the customer hadn't paid. He was going into the finances to understand what he could pay. Like, it was a lot of work to actually just pay a bill. And so when I realized that I was actually doing the same thing that my grandfather used to run his process 60 years earlier, and I'm sitting at the heart of Silicon Valley with all this technology, and I'm thinking, I can do something about this.
Welcome to the Bold Play Podcast. I'm Ryan Prindiville. As this podcast series rolls along, we'll be pulling the curtain back on some of the biggest leaders in business and hear some of the stories behind their boldest ventures. This is more than a story, it's a playbook for action. I'm excited to be joined today by René Lacerte, founder and CEO of Bill. René is a longtime fintech entrepreneur who founded Bill with a simple but ambitious vision to modernize how small and mid-sized businesses manage and move money. Nearly 2 decades later, Bill has become a publicly traded company, processing hundreds of billions of dollars annually for businesses across the country. René, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. It's great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. This is an exciting one for me. Arminino has been both a client and a partner of Bill for a long time, so it's fun to have the conversation and talk about the future. Maybe before we dive into some of your background and tell some of your personal story, I'd love to start with your perspective on today's business environment. There's a lot going on. You've explicitly positioned Bill's AI specifically, as giving the Fortune 5 million the same automation power that large enterprises have had for years. And maybe I'd love to talk or hear from you how you think AI is leveling the field between small businesses and large corporations in the finance and accounting operations world.
I think at its core, technology has always been an enabler, and it enables leverage for the people that use it, and enables opportunities for the people that understand and can take advantage of it. And so when I think about the technology that is coming to play, it's actually really taking all the learning and all the excellence that a Fortune 500 company would have in their finance department, and it's going to put that in the palm of your hand in your phone. And that capability is going to enable SMBs and entrepreneurs to do things they've never done before, to think about their business in ways they haven't thought before, to get back to what they love, which is their passion. And so, for me, this is something, and it's part of the background, right? Like, I'm a serial entrepreneur. My parents and grandparents each had half a dozen businesses in their life, all of them, small, all of them since the 60s, serving SMBs and accountants. And I just have a lot of passion for the community. I think that the secret sauce of society comes from these startups, these entrepreneurs that are taking a tremendous amount of risk and putting it all on the line for their business and their passion. And if we can enable that part of society to be more effective and more successful, it's going to create more joy, I think. And that sounds, grandiose and all that, but I've seen it happen. I've seen the businesses that my parents and grandparents were involved with. I've seen the impact that they've had. And so to the extent that we can take technology and really create, this leverage, that redistribute the leverage that technology enables so that every business has it, like, that's an amazing opportunity. And that's something that I'm super passionate about. And, the Fortune 5 million should not be ignored. They should not be forgotten, which is typically what happens. People don't know how to serve them or connect to them. And, it's like they need stuff too. They need help, and we're here to help.
I love that, and I love the phrasing of the Fortune 5 million because it is true. There's so many of those businesses out there. Do you think the businesses that you see today out there that maybe are the businesses that maybe it was your parents or your grandparents, those types of businesses today, are they positioned to leverage technology in the way that they think they need to? You think they need to?
Well, I think they're more positioned today than they were before. Like, if you think about what we do, we automate payables, receivables, spend, and expense. And for the customers that use us, they save a ton of time. We hear 50 to 75%. For the accounting firms that use us, well, then it allows you to actually be a strategic advisor because you're not having to go through the shoebox. So I do think it is an enabler. I do think it actually gives you leverage in ways that you didn't have before. The hard thing is people are set in their ways,
Yeah.
right? And you have to help them understand that there is a better way, that there is something that will save them time. I think one thing that technology is doing, especially AI is going to do, is going to actually lower the learning curve to actually get the advantage. And so if you think about when I talk about the Fortune 500, there's a tremendous learning curve to build systems in place to actually do all the things in the financial back office. There's just a lot that has to get done. Once you build that, it kind of runs like clockwork. And that's something that's, every Fortune 500 company has. Well, a small business never has time to actually build those systems and processes. And so they're flying by the seat of their pants. They're, literally going from one problem to the next crisis, to one solution, to a customer, to their family. That constant, react mode means they don't have time to be proactive. And so if AI can actually take some of the onboarding process, if you will, and make that, almost a reactive situation for a customer, so they don't have to be proactive about how do I onboard Bill? How do I, make sure all my finances are tied together and work with my accounting firm and do all the things that I needed to do? If that's just out of the box, that's going to be a very different game. And so, we have close to 500,000 businesses on the platform, but there's no reason there shouldn't be 5 million businesses on the platform. And that's the goal, and that's the focus of how we are leveraging AI, is to bring it to the Fortune 5 million, because they don't have time to figure it out, and they expect us to figure it out, and that's what they'll pay us for.
Was there a particular aha moment early on that you said, "Hey, we need to do something for small businesses to make them operate differently"? Was there a specific trigger moment?
Yeah, I mean, the trigger moment would have been my first company, right? So, just to step back a little bit, I'd worked at Price Waterhouse, I'd done some accounting and learned a fair bit about the language of business. And then I worked at my parents' payroll company. And then I went and worked at Intuit, where I launched bill payment products and payroll products for Intuit in the mid to late 90s. And so when I decided to leave Intuit and actually go start a company, the one I did was a payroll company. And so fast forward a few years into running a company, and it was the first online payroll company in the country. Fast forward, a couple of years, and what I found is that the way I was managing the back office was the exact same way I saw my dad do it when I worked for him, which is the exact same way I saw my grandfather do it when I would go into his office when I
Right.
was a little boy, which was there were filing cabinets. Nothing was ever filed appropriately. He was walking around the office trying to ask people whether we should pay the bill or not, or why the customer hadn't paid. He was going into the finances to understand what he could pay. Like, it was a lot of work to actually just pay a bill. And so when I realized that I was actually doing the same thing that my grandfather used to run his process 60 years earlier, and I'm sitting at the heart of Silicon Valley with all this technology, and I'm thinking, I can do something about this. And part of this is when I had started PayCycle, it was all about actually getting the software in the cloud. We didn't actually think about the data, which is very interesting. Like, you think
Right.
about all the stuff that's happening today, it's only possible because the data is
Yeah.
centralized.
Right.
And obviously, we have to have privacy controls and all that to make sure that people aren't sharing the data. But the advantage of having that data means you can actually simplify processes in ways you never could before. And that was the aha for me, because we've been building software and we had this data, all the payroll data. And I'm like, oh, one person's bill is another person's bill. If we have a shared database in the cloud, that can work. That's why we have a network that has 8 million entities in it, right? Because we understand that one person's bill is another person's bill, and one means debits and one means credits. And like, that aha moment was probably 2003, the first 3 years of running PayCycle. And then I would just noodle it at night, and we talked about doing a PayCycle, but the other co-founder didn't want to do it. And so eventually I, got enough of an itch that I just said, I'm going to go do this. And that was 2006.
I love it. I it's funny. I think there's a trend there, or something that we've actually heard a lot in working with clients, is that the next generation doesn't want to run the business like their grandparents did, right?
Yeah.
And it's you're saying that, and it was almost like the impetus there is, don't run your businesses like my grandparents did, right? And do it in a different way that allows you to focus on what the value is in your business. And I think that's a really cool theme. In the early days, there was probably a lot of investors and people out in the street who said, "Hey, is the SMB the right place to focus and so forth too, right? And is that going to be the biggest value for you and for your business? Did you get that question a lot?
I definitely got the question. I'd grown up in and around SMBs,
Right,
and I wasn't afraid of them. I loved them. In fact, I was inspired by them. For me,
right,
the motivation was, I'll make this work. And so I mean, every now and then listen to a few podcasts and other things, and there are definitely people that start businesses only thinking about the business.
hmm,
Um, I started the business only thinking about my passion, having enough confidence that I can make a business out of it. Right. So there's a different thing. So I wasn't worried. Like I didn't know I was going to get all the customers that we have today, but I knew that there was a need, and I knew that I knew enough about managing the finances and building software that I could build a product that would work. And that passion and that energy is actually, I think, what, took us into like, who, if we don't do this for SMBs and accountants, who else is going to?
right,
And you think about this, like you said, 20 years in, there's now a couple of different firms copying us. And, that's the highest form of flattery or whatever, right? Is imitation. And so I feel really good that we defined a category. We are showing people that accountants matter, that they can be strategic advisors, that they can be far more helpful to the business when they have all the information to be able to create the strategic advice that, any business needs. Um, that's something I'm super proud of. And, I knew early on that accountants were valuable. I had been an accountant. My grandmothers were accountants. I knew we were going to have that distribution. I knew that, you know, finding SMBs were going to be hard. So I wanted to be flexible. And so I said, it wasn't just going to be our direct efforts. We were going to have partnerships. And so I had confidence that we could make all that happen. So instead of saying, I'm only going to listen to the people that say, oh, well, that you can't do that, just go after enterprise because it's easier. I'm
yeah.
like, no, I need to really understand and grok what it is that an SMB and the accounts that serve them, what they go through every day. And if I'd started someplace else, I wouldn't. Now, people can copy what we do, and that's fine, but it's not the same thing as totally understanding it.
You talked a little bit about how you looked up to your parents and your grandparents and you took and learned a lot from that space and then your time as an accountant. Are there other business leaders who helped you early on, in the early days that, that you received some advice from or something that you took away and that you thought was kind of a pivotal sense of guidance you got along the way?
I mean, there's definitely business leaders. Obviously, my dad and grandfather, my mom and grandmother. Like I learned a ton from them in business. There's always a teacher,
Hmm.
and so I had a teacher in high school. His name was William Armstrong, and at the front of the classroom, he had two quotes, and one of them was, "If you do only what is required of you, you are a slave. The moment you do more, you are a free man." And that's from Hesiod, 700 BCE. Um, and that just sat with me. I'm never going to do just what's required. I'm going to do more. And I think, I hope that that ethos is inside of the Bill DNA, because there's always more you can do for your customers. There's always more we can do for each other. There's always more. And if you only do what's required, you're not really living to your potential. And so that was inspirational and something that I think about every day. In fact, I mean, it's been 45 years since I was in that classroom, and I still remember the quote, and I know which wall it was on. I know, and that was super important. Another leader, there's a few from Intuit. I mean, Scott Cook, Bill Campbell, and Brad Smith. All of them, really, really strong that I got to learn a fair bit from. I mean, Campbell really, he just believed in potential, and he would just say, you can do whatever you want, and that was, and very good at also telling you how you weren't doing as good as you could. But Brad, the most recent, experiences with him, he was so good at listening and having empathy. And he would have quotes like, God gave you 2 ears and one mouth, use them appropriately. And I don't know if he made it up or whatever, but it's a common thing to say, and that's a good thing. Or he would say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. But he was really good about building teams and building systems that supported teams. So I learned a fair bit from him only as a mentor. I saw him like twice a year for, 10 years, if that
Right.
much, right? When he was CEO, we'd get together and talk. So I would say, yeah, he's an exceptional leader, and I learned a fair bit from him.
That's great, and it's a good segue because the kind of the next segment that I want to talk about is growing Bill over the years, and you're no longer an SMB. So my assumption is that your leadership style has changed throughout the 20 years, and I'm curious, how have you taken those quotes, and those lessons learned and evolved your own style over the last 20 years?
Probably a dozen years ago, I changed my title from founder and CEO to CEO and founder. And the reason I flipped the order is I will be dead 100 years. I will always have been the founder of Bill. Period. Nobody can take that away from me. The CEO, you have to earn that job every day. And I have to think I'm the right person for it. Like, I am way more about the company than I'm about myself, right? Like, this is all about what's the best way to serve SMBs and accountants. How do we make that the reality that we can create a reality for all of them so they can get back to doing what they love? And so when you put the CEO title first, you realize that that's my job. I'm not entitled to it. And that's super important because that means I have to grow. To exactly the question that you framed, the job today is different than it was yesterday, let alone 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right?
Right.
It's always changing. And the external inputs are changing, the internal inputs are changing. All these things change on a consistent basis. And so if I don't have an inclination to growth, then I'm not going to change. And I also have to have the humility to know what I can do and what I can't do, right? Because there are some things you can change. My coach and I, the other thing I would say is you got to have a coach, right? Like, and I've had one, and sometimes I have two, and I have mentors, right? But one of the things that we've talked about is, it is easier to change habits, to really reinforce habits, than it is to add stripes. Doesn't mean you can't add a stripe here or there, but you're not going to all of a sudden become a zebra, right? You
Right.
just can't. Like, there's just too much resistance inside your own psychology to be able to change all the things. So you have to leverage your team. If there are new capabilities that are needed, you have to develop some, but you have to look at your habits and see how you can kind of leverage that. So it's definitely an area that I spend time thinking, like, how do I grow and mature and be the best leader I can for Bill and our customers and our partners. That's an important part of what my job is every day. And I think having a coach and starting with, you don't have all the answers. Like, I mean, that's just me. That's our ethos. I mean, I have some good ideas, but I definitely don't have all of them, and all of them need to be pushed and challenged. And that's not something that you always see. So
Are
something
there
that I
are
make
there
sure that.
any explicit points that you can think along the way that either a coach or a team member said something that said I need to affect or change my leadership style?
Um, well, I mean, I think probably every person uh, has fears around, fears and insecurities. Am I
Right.
good enough for the job? Am I going to be fired someday? Am I the right person? And I had a coach that said to me once, um, just accept the day you're hired is the day you're fired. Get over it, move on, let's go.
I like that.
And it's true. Like, if you just accept that, hey, like this, I'm not going to always be the CEO of Bill.
Mhm.
But when I'm here, do everything I can to be the best CEO, and let go of the fact that, yeah, I'm not always like, I don't, and I think that allows you to take more risk and how you grow. If you think about the changes that I've had to do, I've had to assume if I can't get this skill set inside the company through me or through somebody I hire, then I know I'm probably going to be out. That's okay, right? Like, I'm not here because I want the title. I'm not here because I want to run something. I'm here because I want to make a difference. I want to have impact. And if I'm not the best person, somebody else will. And I think that was important advice. I think, the reflection, there's another coach. He and I talk a lot about constructive dissatisfaction. And that's
Constructive dissatisfaction. That's a good
and,
one.
and and that was something he asked me, and that's what came out back to him. And that's probably been 4 years ago. We go back to it all the time. I'm constructively dissatisfied. I'm a happy person. I'm an optimist, but I'm never satisfied.
Mhm.
And by the way, that can be exceptionally annoying to the people you love. Right?
I,
But like there's
I
all
no doubt that that my wife probably thinks that as well. So I feel you on that one.
but this is for me back to the ethos of if you do only what's required, you're a slave. Like I don't want that. I'm like, how can I do more? How can I actually contribute more and have an impact for the SMBs so that they can actually go on and do the same thing, right? That's part of the cycle, and I think it's super important. So I think the acceptance that this is you're not entitled to the role, that you won't be here forever, and the acceptance of being constructively dissatisfied. If you can't learn from your dissatisfaction, well, then that's dumb, right?
Mhm.
But if you can learn, then that's constructive and yeah, actually fuels the optimism. So it's to me, those are important things to think about.
That's a good segue into kind of talking about how you apply those principles in the business too, because I have to assume that when you've kind of faced some of those major inflection points over the last 20 years, that constructive dissatisfaction approach applies when you're talking about kind of the build versus buy decisions when you're doing a strategic acquisition. You've done a number of those over the years, and thinking about what is our best path to fulfill our clients' needs, right? And our next generation. Is that part of your mindset when you're going in, and how are you evaluating that those kind of approaches?
I mean, I think it's it, everybody at Bill. It's one of the things I think that is a secret. I mean, it's not a secret sauce. I guess it is secret sauce. We're all aligned and identify with SMBs.
Yeah.
We believe that SMBs are the fabric and glue of society. And it's, if you and I weren't talking about building a business and we are just talking about, hey, Ryan, what'd you do over the break? And, what was your favorite restaurant? Chances are you're not going to say a chain,
It's
right?
true.
You're going to say like, there's something local. And like, why is it? Well, the people, they maybe use local ingredients, maybe there's some flair, but that creativity that local restaurateur put into the business of what actually brings people together. And when you go to that restaurant, it's like cheers, everybody knows your name, right? Like that's the thing that I and everybody in the company really identify with is that SMBs are actually what makes society special. It's actually where it brings people together. And we're not going to talk politics, but you could be at that same restaurant. You can have people from right, left, and center all in the same place, laughing, having a good time, and they forget all the other crap that's going on in the world, right?
Right.
And so that is why I care about SMBs. That's why everybody in the company cares. And so that becomes the North Star for our company. We're champions for the SMB. Like we believe in them. We want them to succeed. And so all these decisions that you talked about, the acquisitions, like, well, what else do they need? And how we came up with Divvy, which is now Bill Spend and Expense, it was because we could see in the Bill platform, and you have customers that were using the platform, we would get a lot of spend, and then we'd see one big bill every month, and it was credit card bill.
Hmm.
And we would see credit card bills getting a little bigger because people were trying to use it more and more in different ways. And then we saw a couple of companies come up that were starting to actually do spend and expense cards. And when we looked at our customers that were using that, and we talked to our customers, whether it was Brex, Ramp, or Divvy at the time, the Divvy customers were the happiest. They just really, really loved what they were doing. They identified with the combination of what we do at Bill and what they were getting from the spend and expense card. And so it became easy to buy because we could see that businesses needed it. We heard it from accountants, we heard it from our clients, and it became very easy decision because we knew the customers already loved the product and the experience. And so I think for us, that North Star is that passion around really believing in the SMBs. That's what carries the day. It's how we make decisions. It's how we actually, why we wake up every morning and do what we do.
How if there's a an opportunity like that, and maybe not everybody in the leadership team agrees on what the opportunity is and how it's gonna fit in. How do you manage that situation?
Yeah, I mean that you have to have people be comfortable disagreeing, right?
Yeah.
So we have that probably would come back to our values. So
Yeah.
we have 5 values in the company. 2 of them are authenticity and humility. Passion's a third, accountable is a fourth, and doing it with fun is the fifth. But in a disagreement example, the authenticity and the humility have to be there.
Right.
Because if you're going to disagree, that's authentic. You just don't agree, but you have to present it in a way that shows, okay, I don't know everything. I don't agree. I don't know everything. And the people that are on the other side, they need to actually accept and acknowledge the authenticity that you disagree and be humble enough to listen to what the disagreement's about. And then you kind of dive in. Now, eventually, I mean, it's very rare, honestly, very rare that we have a disagree and commit point. We believe that if we have to, we will get there. But usually it's like, okay, yep, that's your call, and it's not a disagree and commit. I get why you're doing that. And I'll support that. That's not a disagree. It's like, I agree with your principles, different how I was coming from it, but I agree with that. So let's go do that, right? So I think authenticity to allow people to have the disagreements, humility so people can present, not that I'm the smartest person in the room on either side, is super, super important. And, we work hard in the culture to make sure that those two things are front and center for everybody.
When you're thinking about those that maintaining that North Star, your team is no longer the same team. You've changed, leaders over the years, and you've brought that in. What's the key to maintaining that North Star and culture as you've expanded the business?
A lot of learning as a kid from family business. And I saw a lot of challenges in family business.
They're hard.
Yeah, they're hard. And some of these disagreements become personal and it frays the relationship. So my learning was to be very, very clear up front that business is different than personal. And so I've hired friends, and if you weren't a friend when I hired you, you became a friend. And so there's always going to be a personal relationship. And so one of the things that's been true, and by the way, I've fired friends. Like you said, the team's changed. I've had to let people go that I really care about, and I'm friends with all of them. See them, at the holidays, get together, throughout the year. And so I think the North Star is helpful because everybody knows any decision I make is about that North Star, and that is not about them, right? And we have that discussion up front. And so nothing's changing. It's not like I'm going to fly off the handle and be like, oh, you're fired, right? Like, no, we have a set of values, how we operate and run the company. We have a mission that we care deeply about, and I'm doing my best. And, and let's make sure that we, work together well. And if it doesn't make sense, then, I'll support you in the next gig, right? And so I think that having the conversation up front is good to make sure people understand business is different than personal, but that you can have a personal relationship with people on your team. And there's nothing bad about that. That's actually, I think, healthy and good because think about this. We spend more time at the office working with people than we do with our family.
It's true.
So why shouldn't I have a personal relationship? Why shouldn't I like them? Why shouldn't they like me? But, if it doesn't work, we can still have that friendship and it can be time to move on. Right. And so so I don't know if that was your question, but I think being upfront is super helpful and not getting tied into that this is only going to be business. Like the lines blur all the time.
I think it's interesting. You hear about this a lot recently, and you nailed the question. But my thinking was really, you hear about in the news a lot about the distance between expectations of leaders and the team members that are joining now, and is there a cultural change that's gone on around that? And I think you kind of hit it there. And I think it's one of when you're very clear about your mission, your North Star, your goal, your what it's like to be here. That does make it a little bit easier to have those conversations too when things don't work out, right? Because sometimes they don't, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's back to being authentic and being humble.
Yeah.
Right. I had actually, Ken Chenault was a mentor for a period of time. He was the president and CEO of Amex. And he gave me advice once, and we were talking about letting somebody go, and the way he set up, he role played, and after he was done role playing, I said, Ken, do you know what the most common word was in the role play? And he said, no. I said, the word I.
Mhm.
And so part of the advice here that he was giving is like, if you and I were talking, be like, hey, Ryan, like I've done some work. I've thought about this. I've talked to experts here. I've looked at the numbers. I've done this. I thought about what you're good at. I thought about this. I've engaged here and I have made a decision. It's not personal,
Right.
right? Like, and it's so, anyways, I think it's super important to always respect and to say this is not personal. This is a decision that the leader makes. And, it's call, and I could be right, I could be wrong, but it's my decision to make. And if you get people understanding up front, then I think it makes it a lot easier on all the small decisions as well as obviously the big ones.
You've talked in the past, I think, about the kind of a horizontal approach and kind of the importance of kind of the patience over the journey of a founder, versus kind of short-term decisions. And I'm curious if you think that's a lost art a little bit in this wave of next gen, tech companies that are coming out now. And just your thoughts on that.
It's definitely a lost art. I think we're in a cycle in society where people think technology moves faster and faster, and that's almost the exact reason why patience is required.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't mean that you're slow. And I think one of the hardest parts about being an entrepreneur is actually balancing the impatience that got you off your ass to go do something
Hmm.
and the patience of developing your team, developing a product, developing a customer relationship. Patience is a constant in life. You can't have everything when you want it. That's just life. Like we learned that as a kid. Like, no, you're gonna have to wait your turn, right? Like that's just the way it goes. And so having that balance of this is a time to be impatient and this is a time to be patient, I think that is a lost art. And I personally, um, feel like across society, the assumption is that we're going faster and faster and technology is moving faster and faster, but that also is going to create opportunities for more creativity. And creativity comes sometimes in flashes, sometimes it comes from time. But the execution on that creativity, you have to be patient. Like so this is another example. It has nothing to do with business. So when my kids were their teenage years, they had iPhones. Their friends were allowed to sleep with their iPhones at night. They were asking, "Can I have my iPhone after 9 o'clock?" And I said, "No." And this debate went on a few times over a few weeks, and not big debates, but I listened every time because I'm going to be authentic and listen to the request, right? And so finally I said, and this is when the debate ended because they actually accepted this. I said, look, kids, like there are two people in the world that think about your happiness 50 years from now: your mom and your dad. Your friends think about your happiness right now, and you need that. That's great. Teachers think about your happiness this year. But there's two people that think about it 50 years from now, and I'm one of them, and I'm going to say no. So to me, that's an example of patience. Like it'd be so easy to have given him the phone at night. And by the way, they've said recently, thank you so much for not giving us the phone all the time. We see how screwed up people are, right? But that's patience. You have to kind of, take the time and think long enough to know that that's going to be the right decision.
Renee, as a father of two teenagers, I may or may not have had that exact same conversation each of the last two nights, in almost those exact same words. So I feel that one deeply, and it resonates, and that was almost exactly the language that was used there too. So, completely feel that one. It. I'm curious then too. So patience over the long haul, meaning that we're thinking about it in the business sense, and how a founder-led business thinks about organizing and building the leadership. Does that change where you spend your time as CEO and founder? Do you think versus somebody who was CEO only?
So this is the hardest thing of a founder CEO
Yep.
because I know I know where everything is buried.
Hmm.
I I know how to, and I'm good at weeding, and it's very tempting to go do all the weeding.
Right. Yeah, is that the
And
right
that is
thing for
not
you to be
helpful.
doing? Right.
It's not the right thing to be doing. And so this is I honestly, and by the way, everybody in the company knows that too.
Hmm.
Like this is an exaggeration, but if you want an answer fast, go to Renee, right? I've got an answer. I understand the business. I built the business. I've been here the longest, right? That's easy to get an answer. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right answer. And so like getting the teams to understand, like, do not put that decision in front of Renee because he'll give you an answer, but that's not going to be, it's not the best use of his time. It's not the best use, like, go figure it out on your own. Right. So that's a hard thing, a hard crutch, I would say, for a founder to let go of. And I think also hard for a company to let go of. And so, it's a transition. I wouldn't say I'm where I want to be. I'm very tempted by everything in the company. And so, um, you know, it's an ongoing process for me is to continue to say, this is where I need to focus and making sure I get the time on those things.
It's kind of the balancing act between the passion and believing in all of the reasons we're doing this, right? And that founder energy versus the execution focus that you need the team to actually deliver on day in, day out, and let them run, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Are there certain behaviors then that you find yourself rewarding in your team members that are maybe different today than 5 or 10 years ago?
I don't think so. So the thing that the one way of thinking about a culture is like, okay, who are the people that just naturally succeed in the company? Um, and I've said this, I don't know if I've said it recently to the company, but I've said it in many company meetings. I don't want a company, with a few leaders. I want a company full of leaders. And I said, leadership starts with holding the door open for somebody, right? You don't have to do that. Helping somebody carry a box to the car, right? That's leadership. And so the people that are successful, the ones that are really, really get it, are ones that you never have to tell them what to do. They pick up the slack, they open the doors, they do whatever is necessary. And so that has been consistent since the day, I started the company. I would say you have to be an expert at what you do. I think, the type of, I think we are delivering expertise to accounting firms and to SMBs, and I think we have to also be experts. And so that goes a long way. So those things haven't changed. Now, well, what has changed, it's actually harder at a company of 2,200 employees to actually have everybody really believe that. When you're 10 employees and it's just the ethos of 10 people in an office, everybody sees everybody doing everything and nobody being asked to do anything, well, then that's easy to do, right? But at 2,200, people think, oh, I got to wait for my boss to tell me what to do. It's like, no, you don't. You just go do, right? Like, that's what we're here for. If you see something broken, fix it. If you see an
Make stuff
opportunity,
happen.
make it happen. Exactly.
I love it. So maybe let's transition a little bit to talk about the future, more and kind of your thoughts on the future. And I'm not asking you to talk specific about product or anything like that, of course. Things that are to something, but you're heavily investing in AI. It's everybody's talking about it. How do you think about balancing innovation with reliability, especially in handling sensitive parts of our clients' businesses, payments and compliance and these areas. What's the balancing act between and it's related to the conversation earlier, running fast into AI and automation versus doing it right?
I think, I think life is dependent on trust.
Yeah.
The relationships you have with your family members, with your employer, with your customers, with the restaurants you like to eat at, the stores you like to shop at, trust is always essential. And if we're not working to support an environment that fosters trust, um, then I think you have a problem. And I think actually, again, you didn't really ask this question. It's one of my concerns about society right now is that they're forgetting that trust is essential. Trust is essential between human beings. That's how we go faster and further together. Without trust, you're just on your own.
Right.
And so this notion of how AI and what we believe with the Fortune 5 million is real. And our customers, you as a customer, are trusting us to make sure that what we build is going to protect and enable and leverage your work every day. And so we are moving fast, but we're not going to sacrifice trust. And I think, when you work with accountants, you definitely know that. I mean, that is your whole, that's why you get paid, is people trust you to be the experts, and they trust you with their money, and it's all about trust. And so I think that, having built, the company over 20 years and having, worked hard to have a high say-do ratio, what we say is what we do and what we do is what we say, like that really matters in how you build trust. And so when we think about AI, it's not about here's some cool widget we can do because that's going to sound good, externally. It's like, oh, how do we save time? Because that's what we're all about. And so I think about the W-9 widget that we just added, the agent that goes and collects all the W-9s for all of your clients. Like that's a huge time saver.
Right.
Now it's rolling out. It's not, not every firm is using it, not every client is using it. But when that is done, it will save, I don't know if it's millions or thousands of days, but it will save a tremendous amount of time for any firm that's using it, right? And so that's just going to be a huge ability for us to add trust, because we built something that you weren't necessarily asking for, right? Nobody was asking us, hey, can you give us an agent to collect W-9s? We're like, no, we see this as a problem. That ends up enhancing trust. So I think AI, it's just another form of technology, and it always comes back to trust. And I think if people forget that it's going to go do humans work, and it's like, actually, no, it's going to enable humans. Humans are going to then have to trust that to be able to leverage it. It can't hallucinate, right? And all the things that you already know.
It's interesting. We released recently the results of our CFO Evolution 3.0 survey, and that's what you just stated is the number one concern of all the CFOs of all, and actually CEOs and founders were included in the survey as well, and they all said loosely the same thing: is that time is their most valuable asset. And to the extent that they're spending, that leaders, C-suite leaders, are spending their time more valuably, focusing on their clients, on their growth, on their, the things that matter to the success of their business versus some of the things that could be automated or leveraged via AI. That was their number one thought, that's their desire, right? And I think it is something that everybody's focused on. And then the question gets into, the how, right? And to your point about which things do we prioritize and knock off together, and what are the things that are not just shiny widgets to say something, but to actually make an impact. I like that. Are there areas that you see out in the market, whether it's Bill or it's other organizations, that you see AI delivering real value right now?
I think so. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of hype around. I mean, if you go back to the geek in me, the singularity, is that a real thing or not?
Right.
And there's a lot of fear around that. And I just go back to, what's the history of technology? Let's just say the wheel was the first big technological innovation. It meant that, what used to take 5 humans to carry something somewhere, somebody could carry in one, because they had a wheelbarrow, right? It's just an enabler. And what are those other 4 people going to do? I don't know. Maybe they did cave art. Maybe they figured out how to invent a bow and arrow. I don't know. They did something that allowed society to kind of move forward, right? And so, from my perspective, the processes that going back to kind of the beginning of the podcast here, what I saw my fathers and my grandfather and my grandmother and mother doing and running their businesses, those financial processes, they are ripe for automation. So the parallel would be anything that's a mundane rote task that happens consistently over and over again that a human's doing. I don't think humans should be doing that.
Right.
They should be using their brain to come up with some strategic thing that other humans want and need, or the world needs, right? And so I think AI will be very successful there. So when you ask where has it been successful, I see some of the advantages inside of Bill that it's going to be hugely powerful. I think it's going to be helpful getting people to, you know, maybe the initial solution, but not the final solution from a creative, whether it's engineering or whatnot. So, but I think we're a long ways from actually having it do all the things that people say. It will make us better. It will make us smarter. It will give people more time to be creative. It will consolidate and digest information in ways that humans can't. But that's just going to enable a human to do something different with it.
When you look down the road, and this, the prognostication engine right now is the hardest thing that I think any CEO faces, any leader faces right now. Forecasting is probably the number one challenge for any business right now. But when you look down 3 to 5 years, are there, what bold moves do you think leaders, maybe of our mutual clients and other things, need to be thinking about, to stay competitive down the line?
I think it is understanding your business well enough to know where AI could make a difference, right? And so this is not about just assuming, okay, I'm going to replace all the people on my team with AI. This is about understanding their jobs, understanding how they could be more helpful to the business, how their creativity can be unlocked. And that's work. If you don't understand your team's jobs, then maybe you just hire a bot to go do that.
Right.
Well, no, that's not. There's a lot more to the job than what you see. It could be 80% of the time is spent doing what a bot could do, but 80% of the value is that last 20%. And so I think the challenge 5 years out is like, don't rush and replace. I think it's going to be really understand, make sure that you have a path for your team to actually adopt the tools and adapt their skills to actually unlock their creativity to a new level to provide more advice. And I see this with the accounting firms that we work with, right? This is a significant opportunity for accountants to actually, one of the things I said at Digital CPA was, hey, like this is going to give accounting back to accountants. The last 30, 40 years, people have thought that they can do accounting because software made it so easy. Actually, no, it did 80% of the work, but not 80% of the value. And then accountants couldn't really get involved enough to actually do the value, right? This is going to flip that. This is going to be, okay, all the value now is going to be coming from the understanding of how business works, the language of business, which is accounting, right? Understanding that across all of your clients, understand that across all the different geos that your firm works with. There's so many ways that you'll be able to up your game so that when you're talking to your clients, they'll be like, huh, hadn't thought of that. And that's going to be enabled by AI. So anyways, the thing that I think about is how do you rethink the experience, not to replace, but to enable? And I think maybe sometimes people forget that this is not a replacement. This is an enabler. So
That's a great answer, and I think it's super relevant in what we're seeing today in the world, and probably all of our clients and leaders that we work with can think the same thing there as well. I'd love to jump into our closing segment here. This is kind of a rapid fire. It's a couple few quick questions if you can. We kind of do this with all of our guests. The first question is there one thing that you wish you would have known early in your career?
I wish I would have understood the value of paying somebody to be a coach. So, I mean, I've had a coach now for 18 years, 19 years. But the first company, I didn't have a coach. And I really wish I'd had a coach in the first company.
That's
So,
that's a great answer, and you talked a little bit about the why earlier on that, and it's something that's probably underappreciated by a lot of leaders. It's the reflection that maybe they think that they can do it themselves and not have somebody outside to talk to. But leadership's a lonely place sometimes, right?
it's very lonely. And a lot of times people assume, which I don't think is right, that they don't have the time.
Yeah,
If you don't invest in yourself, you're not going to actually grow. Back to the growth thing.
right.
And I just think it's a bad assumption, and that you need help. I mean, none of us have ever done this before. I mean, look at me. I've never been the CEO of a public company before that's, at 1.6 billion in revenue. Like, So I need help because we're not going to be 1.6 billion next year, right?
Right. So what's the one trait every leader must have?
I already said it earlier, but I think the constructive dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
I think that it is super healthy. It implies humility. It implies that you're listening. It implies that you're going to continue to work to be a better leader and a better, um, you know, a better contributor to the company. And so I think what it's kind of the antithesis of what they shouldn't have, which is the arrogance
Right.
and saying that my shares are 10x more valuable than somebody else's shares. Shouldn't be saying that, in my opinion. So
What's one mistake or an easy mistake that leaders often make?
I think talking too much.
That goes back to your other coaching moment, right? Uh,
Yeah.
two ears, one mouth.
Yeah. And I mean, I make it too, right? Like I go back to, just the opportunity to actually uh, listen from your team is where you get your best ideas. But oftentimes people want to hear from you. And so anyways, the trick is to not talk and to say, well, what do you think? And it's hard. It's really hard because people are going to come to you and I could talk about anything for hours about the company because like I said, I know where
Love it.
everything's buried. I know why we did it. So
Who inspires you most today?
SMBs. I
Always.
love talking to any of the SMBs that we visit and just understanding how they do it. And, it is hard. Like I think that people don't realize, and this is the way I think about it. It's one of the most authentic things a human can do is to say, I'm going to come up with an idea that I think the world will like, and I'm going to put it out there every day. And every day they're going to get feedback, whether it's working or not. Like you're not going to tell me, hey, Renee, that looks like an ugly sweater you have on. You're not, I think it's a nice sweater, right? But you're not going to tell me. But if this was a business, you wouldn't come by if you thought it was an ugly sweater. And so now I don't make any money. And so it's so authentic to say, I think I can go help the world with this. And every day you're going to get rejection. And I think it's risky. And so it takes conviction, it takes passion, it takes actually confidence, even though there's plenty of insecurity in business leaders. It takes a lot of things to actually go do that. And that's what inspires me is that it is hard to do. You balance your finances. Like my parents, they fueled the business with their personal credit cards. Like that's risky thing to do.
Yep.
Worked out. That's very authentic to say, I believe in myself enough that I'm going to go take all this risk on. So they inspire me.
I love it. Do you have any favorite leadership books or podcasts, other than this one, of course, that you'd recommend?
I have somewhere behind me, there's a bookcase. There's lots of leadership books. But the one I go back to it's more philosophical. It's the Tao Te Ching. The translations, Jeremy Starr. So Lao Tzu. There's 82 verses. I will pick a verse. And it's everything that you would want about leadership. It really is about putting others first, putting the universe first, listening closely. And what I love about it is I've read the book, countless times. And every time I read a verse, what I'll do is I'll pick a random number between 1 and 82, and I'll just go read and say, that's what the universe wants me to think about today. And every time I read a verse, I will get something different out of it because I'm at a different place, right? So anyways, that's what I like because that's the reflective part of being a leader is, you need time to reflect, to understand and digest what's going on in your world.
That's a great one. It hasn't been mentioned yet in previous episodes, and we'll put a link to it out there for people as well. It's a really good idea.
Make sure it's the Jeremy Starr translation.
Jeremy Starr translation.
It's beautiful.
I appreciate that. Renee, this has been a total pleasure and honor for me. I appreciate the open dialogue. It's been a lot of fun to have you on the show. Thank you for coming today. I'm sure our listeners will get a lot of valuable tips and insights there in meeting you if they haven't met you previously.
Excellent. Well, Ryan, it was a great set of questions. Always good to see you, and really appreciate being on the podcast. So thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Have a good one.
You too.